In this short series of videos, which are intended as a prologue before we do our deep dive into the digestive system, we're going to look at the four major nutrient families that compose most of the important chemicals that are found within your food. Now, the reason why we need to talk about this is we need to talk about what the word to digest actually means. Now, even though we have the understanding that the digestive system digests, what does this refer to at the chemical level? Well, whenever digestion occurs, it involves taking nutrients that are larger and breaking them down into smaller nutrients, and we can classify nutrients into two different categories depending on whether they have been broken down or whether they haven't. Now, obviously, these three circles here are not a real nutrient. This is just an analogy to represent how we classify nutrients that have been broken down and those that haven't. When your digestive system has broken down a nutrient to the smallest form that is possible, this form of the nutrient is what we call a monomer, or monomers for short. And we know that the prefix mono implies that there is only one of it, so that a monomer is a single unit of a specific nutrient. Now, this can be a single unit of a carbohydrate, a sugar. It could be a single unit of fat. It could be a single unit of protein. It doesn't really matter. As long as it is one unit that can be attached to other singular units, we classify it as a monomer. Now, if this unit is one monomer, we can see that this more complicated nutrient here, which actually contains 1, 2, 3, 4 monomers, we can see that when we take many monomers and join them together like this is what we call a nutrient polymer. And polymer, the name polymer should be obvious because poly is one of the prefixes that means many. So when we take many monomers and connect them together, we have a polymer. Now, your digestive system actually has the opposite job. The nutrients that are found in your food primarily come in the form of polymers, because obviously the food that you eat is going to have many nutrients that are all attached to each other, and when your digestive system breaks down polymers at the chemical level, its job is to break them down into individual monomers. And before we move on to the individual categories of nutrients, we can talk about the specific chemical reaction that is used by your digestive system's biological catalysts, and that type of reaction is what we call a hydrolysis reaction. So if we break down the meaning of this word, the prefix hydro is obviously the prefix that means water, which means that water is going to form a critical part of this chemical reaction. And then the suffix here, lysis, is a suffix that means to break down or to separate. For example, in the word analysis, this is the same suffix that we see. When you do analysis of a word, for example, you take the word and you break it down into its components in order to understand what each component means, in order to figure out what the whole word means overall. So literally, hydrolysis means to use water in order to break polymers into monomers. So a hydrolysis reaction involves your body's biological catalysts, your enzyme, adding a water molecule every time that a polymer is to be broken down into a monomer. So if we want to break this monomer off, your body's enzymes would do a hydrolysis reaction, add a water molecule in order to break this monomer off. Then they would add a second water molecule to break this monomer off, a third one to break this monomer off. And when all of the polymers that make up the nutrients in your food have been broken down, digestion is said to be complete. And in a follow-up series of videos to this series, when we take a look at a crash course on how digestive enzymes work, we will look at this specific reaction in more detail. Now that you've been introduced to the background of what the difference between nutrient polymers and nutrient monomers are, in the next video we're going to do a very quick introduction to the four major nutrient families, that being carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids.